Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison here again for trades, for trade analyzers and trade finders, and just DLF. We're here for DLF. We're here for you. We're here for you. That's what we're here for. We're here for me. I mean, let's face it. That's usually what this comes down to. Addison, I don't know how to trade this guy. Let's do a show about it. Actually, this one, well, okay. To call this one Addison's idea. Sorry, I have to throw Addison's name in the quotes. It is a little not fair because he pulled what he did a few weeks ago and just went back to what we did last year. And it's the right move because we are about to hit point scoring season. We are at the point where you do need to start worrying about your lineup a little bit. We had football last week, but we have football this week. I mean, Addison was saying before, like, I'm like, do we have Thursday football? I'm like, I think we do. He's like, we do. And Friday football? No. And Saturday football? All right, now you're just lying. And Sunday football? Okay, yes, well, we have Sunday football. That's what football is. So yeah, we're here. It is football time. We're about to see some players on the field that we've been waiting forever for about 3 minutes, and then they're going to get taken off. But it's football. It's going to be so much fun. We're here, but also that means you're going to start spying your lineups, especially in your not super active leagues. You're going to start probably now setting those lineups. You might have another week or two in the more active leagues, but I at this point, like usually in the non-point scoring season, I say, don't worry about your lineups. Wait until the points scored. Wait till the points are scored. We're close enough. At this point, I'm not blaming anyone for spying their starting lineup. So this week, we are doing players to acquire if you are rebuilding, which obviously means next week we're going to be doing players to acquire if you are competing, because those are the two things that go hand in hand. But last I checked, it's this week and not next week. So let's talk about some rebuilding players. And honestly, Addison, you picked this guy, and I don't know how I feel about it. So I want you to introduce.
I threw out Trey Lance as a rebuilding asset to go and acquire. Obviously, I mean, specifically in like super flex leagues and one quarterback leagues, I don't know, but I'm sure he'd be fine because he has the upside to potentially be a guy that you could start in one quarterback leagues. But in super flex specifically, this is what this is tailored to. I think that a lot of people out there don't know what the heck to do with Trey Lance, and I totally understand it because I don't even think the Niners know what the heck to do with Trey Lance. But I do think that he is a good rebuilding asset because he is a player that you can acquire for pretty cheap right now because nobody knows what to do with him. But he has that upside that if he ever were to become the starter, whether that's on San Francisco, whether they go with Brock Purdy and they end up trading Trey Lance to another team and he, gets a fresh start somewhere else as a starter, then that could work out too. But if he becomes the starter at any point, we know that he has top 10, top 12 upside because of the rushing floor that he offers. And that is a better asset to have, especially in super flex leagues, than guys like Derek Carr and Kenny Pickett and, Jimmy Garoppolo. Like what the only real upside that they have is then your ability to trade them to somebody who needs a QB3 and that helps your rebuild. Whereas Trey Lance, as an asset that you can have on your roster, could become a guy that you actually end up starting when you actually potentially become competitive. So I threw him in here as a good rebuilding option.
Even though my trade apparently wasn't good enough to be put on this show sheet, last week I traded away on a team I am rebuilding. I traded Trey Lance and Romeo Doubs for a 24 first and 25 second. The first is a playoff team. I know you're not really supposed to project, but like the dude's made the playoffs the past 3 years and this team is still not aged out. So it's going to be a playoff team. And I was fine with that. And I was a little surprised he gave me that 25 second, but I took my shot and he said yes. So rock and roll. So if you can get a first, I'm all for sending Lance away for a first. And I'm glad to see Addison agreed with me on that. But let's get to these trades and see how we feel about it. In the these are both 12-team Superflex. We have Trey Lance and Luke Musgrave for Rachaad White and Zach Wilson. So this is Trey Lance for Rachaad White. Trey Lance coming in at 165.7, Rachaad White 157. I mean, I don't hate the dart throw of Luke Musgrave, just throwing it out there.
I was going to say, you kind of dismissed him pretty quickly, and I'm like, he's not the worst. Like, he's better than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, like he's not bringing value to this trade, I would say. But at least if you're in a tight end premium league, okay, no, let me take a step back. If you're just in a regular, average, everyday league, to me at least, the best use of the bottom of your roster is running backs. Have all of those handcuffs, have all of those pass catcher people who might get a little bit of extra work, get a lot of those lower end running backs, because if someone gets hurt, they get elevated. Either you have someone you can plug in or someone you could trade away. If you're in a tight end premium league, filling the bottom of your roster with tight ends dart throws is very helpful, because I mean, you just drafted Luke Musgrave maybe in the third or the fourth, or you traded a third for him. There's nothing saying that he's not gonna do well. I don't care that they drafted 2 tight ends. They don't really have that many great options there, and we don't know what that offense is going to look like. So if Luke Musgrave shows that he can be one of those Chigakonkwo level tight ends, you probably sell him for a second, which in any case, profit. But still, like, I'm not valuing him much in this trade. So Lance for Rachaad White, I don't want either of these on a rebuilding team. Like, if I'm actually, you know what? Fine. Let's say I am agreeing with Addison, or even let's go back, because Rachaad White most likely isn't worth the first, even though people want to think he is because he's the starting running back on a team.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say Rachaad White worth a second, Trey Lance worth a second. Everything I said before fits, where I'll sell a running back that I don't want on my team because I'm rebuilding, and I'll take that shot at the quarterback. And you're getting the shot at the tight end. So I'm taking that back. I'll take Trey Lance and Luke Musgrave on this one as a rebuilding team, but also flipping that around as a competing team. It's close. I would want not Zach Wilson as the second piece. Can I get Chigakonkwo instead? Can I get someone that might put points on my roster? Then I'd probably feel a lot better for this. But yeah, I think it's a good trade, and I think if I am rebuilding, I'm down on the Lance and Musgrave side.
That's why I specifically wanted to highlight this, was because I feel like, you know, when we tell people to start entering their rebuild, what's the first thing we tell them to trade away?
Get rid of those running backs.
Right? Get rid of the running backs that have value, especially the running backs like Rachaad White, where yes, they might have value now, but what is that value a year from now? What is the value 2 years from now? Whereas with Trey Lance, the only thing that could change for Trey Lance's value is if it goes up, basically. Like, we already know basically that he's not going to be the starter for San Fran. But if he becomes the starter for San Fran at any point because of injury, or Purdy just doesn't look like the guy that he was last year, now his value is going up. If he gets traded away, I'd imagine he gets traded to a team that probably wants to use him as a starter. His value is going to go up. So it's just, this trade to me is perfect. Is getting rid of the short-term value asset in a running back and moving it over to a position and a player who really only can go up, I think. And if he hits, and he hits big, then that's going to be way more than Rachaad White. Even if that, you know, probability is really slim, it's still there for Trey Lance.
All right, let's move on to the next one. That is Trey Lance and Chigakonkwo for Dallas Goedert and Brian Robinson. Again, we're looking at these very even across the board, where Lance and Goedert worth pretty much the same, Okonkwo and Robinson worth pretty much the same. And man, I want more for Goedert. Like that's what I'm stuck on. Again, I don't know if this is premium. I don't know anything much about this, but like, even if it isn't, I want more for Goedert. But again, I don't want Goedert or Brian Robinson on my rebuilding team.
That, again, this is another one that I wanted to highlight of, if you're rebuilding and these are 2 of your best assets, then it's probably worth going to a Trey Lance, going to a Chigakonkwo, both of whom could gain a ton of value this year or into next offseason. Brian Robinson is just a plodding 2-down back. I don't think he really has all that much upside. Dallas Goedert, I love Dallas Goedert. We both love Dallas Goedert, but there really isn't all that much upside, I think, for him either, because there's no real path for him to grow in his offense, because A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith will always be the 1 and the 2.
Yeah, but tight end 5, even in that offense. Like, I mean, maybe not room for growth, but does he need to? I don't think he needs to.
There's no real, like Goddard, I feel like just is what he is,
and that's
essentially.
Fine.
And it's more than fine. It's fantastic. I love Dallas Goedert. But if you're trying to move away assets that don't really have opportunities to grow or gain in value, not saying that you should take hits on them and not not get the proper value back. I think you're getting kind of proper value back here, but I just feel like Goddard is kind of at the top of the line where I'm okay moving him away for the upside shot on a Trey Lance kind of a player in a full tear it down rebuilding team situation. And you get Chigakonkwo on top, who I feel like, based on the hype and stuff, could be another value that and player that you just move away before the season starts. You don't want to wait and see it. Or maybe you wait and see it. You take that risk and maybe he does hit and he is a player then that you can flip later on down the road.
Oh man, we're moving on because I want to talk about this next one. The player, I brought this player up and I'm a little sad that, it's always funny. I always get asked the question, like, when do you believe coach speak or puff pieces in the preseason or all the offseason workouts? Whenever it reinforces whatever I think is right anyway. Like, when do you use these terrible stats like yards per carry? When they help my argument.
Of course.
If you use it and I don't like it, no, that's terrible. Why would you ever use yards per carry? That's the worst. But, my running back has like 8 yards per carry. Of course he's great. I'm like 80% joking. But okay, so I really like Sam LaPorta. I liked him coming in. Michael Mayer was that steady Eddie, the Jason Wittens of the world. LaPorta has more of an ability to be, man, I don't want to say the names because they're the higher end guys, and I don't want to say I'm comparing him to that, but he's more athletic. He is more of an offensive weapon than Mayer is. Mayer is an all-around very good player. He'll be on the field every single play. You never need to pull him off. LaPorta might just mostly be a slot receiver, and I'm cool with that. It's just like why everyone loves Kincaid, because he's a glorified slot receiver. If Sam LaPorta comes out and has a 700, 800 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, his value isn't going to change from that early second that it was, which is great for a rebuilding team because he's not going to score enough points to really hurt you. And it's the kind of player where A, value is insulated, and B, if he does come out and just destroy, you have a player that gained value, but also you get young tight ends now, A, because like I said before, you want to fill your roster with them in tight end premium leagues, but also I believe that LaPorta can be one of those guys that you want to start every week, but it's going to take a year or two because it does for tight ends. So I think it's great to grab him now because he's not going to score too many points and his value won't drop. But if you're getting him to want to flip him, I don't think that's the right move. I don't think LaPorta is the right player for that because, like I said before, I think he will need to just destroy for his value to really go up. For someone to say, oh, I would easily pay a 24 first for LaPorta, I think he needs to have a Pitts-esque season with a couple of touchdowns. So the first, again, 12-team Superflex for both of them. Oh, man. Oh, this first trade is Jordan Addison and Sam LaPorta for TJ Hawkinson and Chase Claypool. I would be brought to tears getting this trade on a rebuilding team if I had Hawkinson to trade away. Like, if this came into my inbox, I would.
Yeah.
Except
you go buy some lottery tickets as well.
Like, wow. Yeah. I mean, Addison is in here at 298.8, Hawkinson at 259.7. Like, if you're telling me that this is a 2-point per reception for tight end, we can change the conversation of how favored the Addison side I think this really is. But man, I do think Addison is that dude. The rest of them, we've agreed for both sides. Man, I don't think I'm selling this to go get Hawkinson if I'm competing. Like, I think Addison's scoring points this year. And if not, well, no. But anyway, I think his value still has a way to go up because I think he's that good and that offense could be that good. I don't do this the other way around, but I would love to get Addison and LaPorta for Hawkinson.
Yep, this is a fantastic trade, and this is the second most recent trade in the trade finder for LaPorta. This happened a couple of days ago, and it's not in a tight end premium. I looked at the settings; there was no tight end premium whatsoever. This is just a normal Superflex league.
And that is
Hawkinson and Claypool for Addison and LaPorta. So, yeah, this is. Let me switch it up on you. If this was Zay Flowers and LaPorta, you still doing it?
Yeah, but also I would do it the other way around too.
It makes more sense to get Hawkinson then at that point.
Yeah, like if it is Zay Flowers instead of Addison, I would probably still send Hawkinson for that because I think Flowers is good enough. Like sending away Hawkinson, I'm fine. Getting a guy who I think is capped as a wide receiver too, like Flowers will be. Sending it back makes it the same thing. Like sending Flowers and LaPorta away for Hawkinson makes me a lot more willing to do it.
Yeah, because I went to because I felt like Quentin Johnston was a little too close to Jordan Addison to really compare. Like I feel like that even though you prefer Addison more, Quentin Johnston still has that upside, and there's a lot more with him.
I'm a sucker for Quentin Johnston anyway, so that definitely would have made it difficult. Yeah, Zay Flowers is that line for me.
Yeah, but yeah, because anything past Zay Flowers, like you're not doing Mingo and LaPorta or Rice and LaPorta.
Yeah, there was a dive at wide receiver at that point. So
right,
yeah, you're right. All right, so let's move on to the next one because oh, wow, this is what you're doing to me. Okay, let's do this. Devonta Smith, Sam LaPorta, and a 25-second for Jalen Waddle. Devonta's, it doesn't really matter because Sam LaPorta is 76 points, by the way. I didn't say it before. The total value of the package side is 615. Waddle in at 706. I love the Waddle respect. I love Devonta, and Waddle's going to score more, but I don't think it's that much. I would send Waddle for this package. I think that might not be a majority thought, but it's probably just my Devonta love in there.
So I actually, at the very beginning of the offseason, I do a trade down video every single month where I give options to elite players to trade down from to these other players. The first video that I did of that this offseason was trading down from Jalen Waddle to Devonta Smith. Because at that time, and I still feel like based on the analyzer values now, that the difference between the two was basically like a mid-ish first. Like it was like 107, 108, 109, which I feel like you're not getting that necessarily with Sam LaPorta in a second, but you're pretty close, I think. I would have, if I were doing this trade and I was trying to sell Jalen Waddle on my rebuilding team to get Smith, LaPorta, and the pick, I'd be trying my hardest to make that a 25 first.
Yep.
Like I honestly, like I don't know if I would just straight up do this if that pick was not a first. Like in its form right now, I might just say, you know what? I might just hold on to Jalen Waddle, wait till he scores 30 points again with Tua back and healthy, and all those concerns are kind of washed away for the time being in season when points are being scored, and then sell Jalen Waddle. But this also is a pretty good trade to do just in general right now. You are losing a little bit of value, and I would be trying for that first. But as it stands right now, this, I do agree, is a pretty solid deal.
And you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where I wouldn't care to do. I would absolutely be okay. That's worded better, to do Waddle in a second to turn that second into a first. Like I'd be willing to add a little bit to change that into a first, but I'm still completely, again, I just really like that. Like I like every player in this, which makes it a little harder, but like Devonta, LaPorta, fine. It has to be a second. Let's do it. I would take it. But I understand your side too. And that's probably the correct way of thinking. But me being me and a player I like, I'm just going to be cool and take it. All right. Player 3. I'm excited for. Player 3, I'm excited. I think you listed this guy, right? So why don't you go?
Yeah, it's Rondale Moore. And I absolutely love Rondale. I think he's been a player that I've been trying to target all offseason long because I feel like his value is just so depressed because he didn't really do anything his rookie year, and he missed half the season last year because of injuries, some at the beginning of the year, some at the end of the year. But he had like this 7-week stretch right in the middle of the season where he was the wide receiver 2 with Hollywood Brown. Then Hollywood got hurt right as DeAndre Hopkins was coming back in, and he was the wide receiver 2 again with Hopkins, with Hollywood out. And he was on pace for 80 receptions for 1,000 yards. He didn't score a ton of touchdowns. I think he was only on pace for like 2, 3, 4 touchdowns, but 80 receptions, 1,000 yards as the wide receiver 2 with Kyler Murray for the majority of those games, behind either Hollywood or DeAndre Hopkins. And his value is like in the wide receiver 50s in Dynasty ADP. And so I'm just like Rondale Moore as my like wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5 is just amazing, absolutely amazing to me. And I think he's a player that if he stays healthy, and I've been seeing reports out of training camp that his utilization this year in this new offense is drastically different than what it was in Cliff Kingsbury. Like they're opening up, well, absolutely, but they're opening up his athleticism. They're sending him more deep. They're using him more around the offense. It's not just him getting slants and screens and end arounds. It's like they're actually using Rondale Moore. And so I'm very excited for it. And I think that he has a lot of potential to grow as a wide receiver too in this offense and could grow a lot in terms of dynasty when that production then follows for being that wide receiver too. Another player on your list was Wan'Dale Robinson. So we're gonna mess that up.
They don't names next to each other, but okay, let's keep going.
Well, speaking of next to each other in Dynasty ADP, they are next to each other back to back in both wide receiver rankings and in overall rankings. So we also like Wan'Dale Robinson as a rebuilding target. So because their value is basically identical in ADP, I feel like with all these trades, you could just replicate them and just replace Rondale with Wan'Dale.
Yeah. And also because like we saw a connection between Wan'Dale and Daniel Jones, and the unfortunate situation was Wan'Dale shouldn't be that like he shouldn't be getting 16 targets a game. He's not a big enough dude to take those hits. And we saw that, so it's great that they added a bunch of extra wide receivers because first of all, I think he's better than most of the slot receivers they brought in. And I'm glad that there's field stretchers now. And, Jalen Hyatt was the perfect ad for Wan'Dale to still be part of that team, part of that offense. It's not like Sterling Shepard is going to stay healthy. Cole Beasley will probably get cut in a couple of weeks. I mean, I'm all on the Wan'Dale train, clearly, because he was my recommendation that Addison didn't think was good enough to go with. But let's go to this first. We finally have 12-team one quarterback, and it is a 24 first and Rondale Moore for Alexander Mattison and Tyler Lockett. The 24 first coming in at 242, Rondale at 69 for a total of 311, Mattison at 191, Lockett at 127 for a total of 319. So this is perfectly on par. Clearly it's realistic because it happened. But like to me, Mattison is worth a first. And this seems very off. Like I'm not moving Mattison off my team for less than a first for how many points he's going to put up this year. That's my thing. Like, I think he's going to score enough that he's worth a first. Like, am I wrong?
No, he's one of those players that rides that line. He's of the players that I'm not selling for less than a first, but I'm not buying for a first. One of those kind
pay
of
a second and buy it for yeah.
And that's where like I think that because of that, this trade makes sense because you basically like it's maybe a mid to late first and a third for 2 early seconds like that. You can work around that for value and stuff.
But but even just to put it back in the perspective of this show of a rebuilding team, to move Mattison and Lockett and to get back a first and hold on, let's see what 7 years at wide receiver for a pretty similar-esque wide receiver, like see there it goes. Rondale is capable of Tyler Lockett-esque. Of course, nothing will ever be that season where Lockett and Russell Wilson had a perfect passer rating with each other, but like Lockett has always been very, very good in real life and in fantasy, and Rondale has the ability to be that as well. So yeah, swapping the first for Madison, swapping Rondale and Lockett, I'm very easily sending the players for the rebuilding side, sending Madison and Lockett. But am I sending a first and Rondale Moore for Madison and Lockett? The reason I'll say probably not is because I believe in Rondale Moore. If you don't, and you have him on your team, I think I do this. Like if I'm like, yeah, Rondale's is not going to hit. He's not meant for the NFL. And this is my first. I'm competing, so it's going to be in the later end of the round. Yeah, I'd send those for Madison and Lockett. But again, you and I believing in Rondale, we're both like,
yep. I value my first more than that too, because so much could go wrong for Madison and Lockett this year that this trade looks horrendous.
That is a very fair point.
In 6 months.
Oh, okay. So here we go. Next one. Marvin Mims and Rondale Moore for David Montgomery and Trey McBride. There's nothing you can do to make me send away Marvin Mims and Rondale Moore in one trade. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. That's a lie. Of course you can. You want to give me for that? Sure, let's go. But like, and I also did just trade away Marvin Mims in the trade, but that's besides the point. Like I'm a very big fan of Mims, and I know we say it every time we bring him up. I'm a fan of him. He's really good. He's he was the best deep ball tracker in this draft. Oh, and he landed with the best deep ball thrower in the league, who just had a really bad year last year. You know, like him and Russell Wilson together is like the perfect landing spot for it, and I love it. Man, I'm not high enough on David Montgomery or Trey McBride for this. I really do like Trey McBride, but I don't think it's something I want to or need to pay players I like for, if that's worded correctly. Like David Montgomery, I'm sure is going to be fine in Detroit. He's gonna. I know you're much more into Gibbs than I am. I think David Montgomery is going to see a lot of work, not workhorse, not 65% or anything like that. I think it might be a little more like 55-45 in favor of Montgomery, maybe, but it doesn't make. I've never been in on Montgomery enough as a player to make that move for him. And Trey McBride, honestly, like he still might be a year or two out of scoring points. So like that's not really something I'm looking for on a competing team. So to me, this is pretty easily the younger guys, even though it's 171 to 188 on the analyzer in favor of the Montgomery McBride side.
Yeah, I think from a rebuilding aspect, this is fantastic to move away from the guy who's just going to be a solid RB2, but doesn't really have all that much upside and a what if fun tight end, but could just also be really nothing for two players that we believe a lot in, that you potentially believe a lot in as well too. Two young wide receivers who could gain a lot in value. And yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. I do agree that David Montgomery could be a really good asset for this year and for next year. I mean, when you look at other players that are in the Jahmyr Gibbs' like comp sphere, like Reggie Bush was a top 5 pick at Jahmyr Gibbs' ish size, and in his rookie season averaged 16 or 17 fantasy points per game with over 100 targets. And in that same season, Deuce McAllister had 250 for 1,010. So, you know, there's historical precedent for two running backs to share their workload in different respects in terms of having the 2 down and goal line work and then having the majority of the receiving work. And they're both really good for fantasy. And we even just saw it last year on this Lions team with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, you know, and if that's, I mean, I'm sure Montgomery's not going to score 75 touchdowns like Jamal Williams did last year, but if, you know, he could still have 250 for 1,000 and fall into the end zone 8 to 10 times, and Gibbs still gets 80 to 90 targets, and they're both fantastic. But on a rebuilding team, you don't want an okay-ish RB2. Give that to the contenders and get something back from them that they might not necessarily need in terms of young wide receivers who haven't hit yet but have a lot of upside. And that's how perfect trades get done.
All right. Well, before we do actually head out of here, I want to actually take the time to actually slowly talk about it. We are starting a Watcher League. It is a 24 team with 2 copies. So it's pretty much 2 12-team leagues slapped together. But on the plus side, you can trade across divisions. So you have 2 people to go after if you want a specific player. League settings wise, it's pretty vanilla. It's practically a trade addicts league, 12-team superflex PPR tight end premium with the 0.75. And I think I did leave the 0.05 points for return yardage, which I just like saying more than it is actually effective. It does not do much at all, but it's something.
And it is on MFL for the people out there that care.
It is on MFL. We are asking $42 per team, and that is also because we are going to be donating to charity in the end anyway. But if you do want to get your name in the hat, DM me at Dynasty Outhouse, DM Addison, Adam Hayes _, or straight up at him saying that he's a jerk. Please, someone, anyone. And yeah, we'll send you a form to fill out because we just want to get everyone's name in one spot, and we're going to finish filling the league. We got a decent amount of it filled so far, but we wanted to give everyone another week's chance to be able to get their names in there. We are going to fill it this weekend, and we're hoping to start the draft on Tuesday because we're getting close. Like football's pretty much here, so you know we got to hurry up with these drafts.
Do you reserve a spot for somebody who comes up to you at the expo this weekend and tells you that I'm a jerk? automatically.
For 1 second, Addison, you are not a jerk. You are brilliant. Yeah, you're a brilliant jerk. Yes, I'm going to be at the expo this weekend. During the expo itself, Fantasy Cares is going to have a table, and I'll be there for, I think, the entire time. But yeah, I'll be around everywhere with things going on over the weekend. If you come up to me and just be like, hey, Addison's a jerk, get me in that league. Okay. What's your email address? Let's go.
Let me pull my phone out right now.
Yep. Let's do it. But on that note, this has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes, @MazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.